Hi, I'm the Recruiting Maven and welcome back to my channel. Today's topic of conversation is AI bias in recruitment. With that said, I just want to say a quick thank you for those of you who like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I deeply appreciate your kind support. For those of you who are new to my channel, I have an ever-growing playlist with career tips and advice, so make sure you check that out. And if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing, and when you do, hit that notification bell. So diving into today's topic, I just want to preface our conversation by letting you know that, when we hear the word bias, it can be very triggering. And I want to dispel or really separate the emotion from the actual algorithm. Algorithms, I gotta tell you, do not have any emotions. We're not at that level of AI. Maybe someday we will be, but as of today, we're not. And so I wanted to give you a really good foundational understanding of what AI bias actually really is and what it's not. So let's talk about why AI would have a bias or be biased, in other words. And the simple answer is data. If the quality of the data when the algorithm is actually written is just bad, by bad I mean it's missing something, it falls short somehow, then it's not going to give you a really good output. It's not going to give you a really good solution. It's not going to give you the best answer, the best result, and so forth. And so please understand, AI is not emotional. It's not going to just start having these unconscious bias because it's thinking and it's having these emotional types of responses to your application, your resume, your background. It cannot do that. It's right now, it's not intelligent enough to be able to be at a human level of cognitive response and reaction. So it's devoid of that. So please understand that this isn't about anything personal, emotional. It's really about just simply bad data. So let's start with a simple example. So primary colors are three: blue, green, and red. And as a painter, you want to make the color pink, but you don't have the color red. You only have green and blue. You can't make red, bottom line. Very much like in AI, in an algorithm, if there's that piece of information missing, as I just spoke, how can you make a good decision? How can you create something that's not there? Because it simply just isn't available. And so again, it goes back to the actual data that is actually provided to the algorithm that then sets the pace for a possible bias. Okay, so for those of you who are techie or have an inclination for the techie side of everything, what really happens is, sort of like the black box in airplanes, AI has a black box. And a lot of times, even the people who create the AI algorithm don't have access to that information. Why? I know, right? Why? But some of them are written that way. And I know, especially in the EU, some of these algorithms that are being used are being requested to have a transparency or to be transparent. So when they need to be readjusted, then the developer can actually take a look at how the algorithm is not functioning properly to then be able to say, okay, now we either have to rebuild it from scratch or we can make specific adjustments so that then the output that we want to see is correct or better in this case. So algorithms are used for a lot of different things. In financial tech, or fintech as it's called, it's going to take a look at your name, where you live, your zip code, what your debt to income ratio is, and all these data sets, right? And if it's missing something, again, you may not get that loan. And it may not be due to biases in any way, but in this case, when it deals with tech, it's actually a bias. If there's something missing, if there is something that, in other words, it's inputted incorrectly, then it really becomes a bias because it cannot make a good decision based on the information it has. So I just want to make you aware that AI bias in recruitment is a little bit more complicated than it actually seems. This isn't about the traditional biases that we always hear about, that we always talk about, and I don't want to talk about that because we're focused just strictly on technology. And so I think that there's a lot of people really trying to make a good effort to not have those biases. And one of the solutions in not having AI bias is having really a team that is very holistic. And what that really means is maybe having somebody that can be sort of the ethical guard. So as these guys are developers creating that algorithm, you can have somebody that is a sociologist, even a psychologist, to be able to then contribute to that algorithm creation to say, hey, let's take a look at the data sets. Why are they that way? And then have that input from a completely different angle that, you know, let's be honest, we are who we are. We deal in algorithms, we just think, you know, sort of like this one way, right? As a talent advisor, sometimes I get stuck in, you know, just the process, follow the process. And we get caught up with that sometimes just based out of the fact that we don't have a lot of time. But then similarly, we need to take a look at those algorithms on a holistic level so there's some checks and balances to that algorithm. So asking a psychologist might be a really good idea. And these are just some of my thoughts just based on all the various conferences I've attended and the various articles I have read. And so those are my suggestions that could happen or maybe should happen. And you know, it's not exclusive to those. And so it's nice to be able to get somebody else's perspective that isn't doing the same thing that you are. So maybe you're not the code writer, but you know, your background is more sociology or psychologist, and having that other perspective really to enhance that algorithm, I think is sort of a win-win situation. I can't think why it would be detrimental in any way. Now, this is just speculative on my end. I know I've heard Yuval Harari touch on some of this and so many other speakers and writers, but I just thought that that was such a really good idea, such a good approach to bring forward or bring together a team that would be able to support. And so overall, I think it's really important to have somebody else's perspective that is not our own. And when you're doing one job and you're just used to doing it, it's nice, especially in this sensitive area of bias, to be able to get somebody else's perspective. And so I don't know if that's the only solution. I think it's a good start. I think that making an effort is something to be applauded. Now, I do have a video that I've went into in depth as to how AI actually is now assisting and helping people to apply to jobs, and that goes really into the nuts and bolts of it. So I didn't want to touch on any of that at this point in time. I just want to give you, again, a really good definition or working definition as to what AI bias actually really means. On this channel, we do have ongoing conversations about the fourth industrial revolution, what that's going to mean to you and your job over the long and short term. So do make sure you're checking out some of those videos, because getting prepared for that change, which is really around the corner, it's not, we're going to plan to plan. This is already here. And so educating yourself, spending a little bit of time, even if it's a 10-minute video, make sure that you're understanding what these changes are, how that's going to affect your job, and what is it that you actually going to need to do in order to pivot. If your job goes away, say tomorrow, and it could, how are you going to pivot? And most people will say to me, oh, that's not going to happen. But I will tell you, I could see this coming in the recruitment world 4 years ago. And I had to ask myself, okay, if an AI can actually do the sourcing and the screening of candidates when they apply a lot better, a lot faster than I can, what's to say that there won't be a thinning of the ranks, meaning that there'll be a lot less recruiters needed to do that job? So I'm not saying that recruiters are going to go away 100%, but I will tell you there's already been a thinning of the ranks because of the pandemic. And so that is not science fiction. That is not some faraway fantasy thought that I've created in my mind. And it's not. It's modern day. It's here. And so do check out that video, because it's going to open up your eyes how intelligent some of those chatbots are. I know there's some really bad ones out there, but again, the pandemic has pushed that technology further and faster than you could probably imagine. And of course, it is very expensive. Let's be honest. So not every company is going to have this technology, but with anything, the more people use it, the more there's demand and implementation, the less it's going to cost. So that eventually that's going to be more and more of a norm than the traditional application process that we're accustomed to right now. And so make sure you're educating yourself. You're thinking about your future over the next 5 to 10 years, because that's really when it's really going to take off. So with that said, I do hope that you have found this helpful, and thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing to my channel. I deeply appreciate your kind support, and I will see you in my next video. Take care and have a lovely rest of your day.